Hi there, it's Lawrie Brewster here, and I am glad to bring back the Hex Video Diaries. And oh, who is this? Oh, it's Sarah Daly. So to recap from April to August, basically what happened is our fantasy film got greenlit, so that will be happening. Our church got flooded by a giant storm, and so we've had to throw out a pile of stuff that got soaked in the basement. That sucks. And we are talking to Tom today about his own feature film that he will be producing. And this is going to be very fun because you guys are going to get a front row seat from the inception to the production of that film. Of course, we'll still be doing Obscurama and our film review shows and fun stuff, but because we are now back into filmmaking, because COVID has just lightened up enough that lets us do that, then you can expect a lot more video diaries now as well, which is exciting because it gives you guys a chance to get involved in our projects and a front row seat to everything that we do behind the scenes. Okay guys, let's go talk to Tom. Tom over here is going to be directing one of our new feature films.
Correct.
And we're at the very earliest stage of development at the moment. We're just discussing ideas about what that storyline could be, and it's pretty damn awesome. Okay, so we have coffee now. We're good to go. So, inspiration-wise, I guess it's fair to say that we've been looking at urban myths as a kind of inspiration. So we've been looking really at real life. One of these things, God, my hair, jeez, is...
I thought you said pretend it's not here.
Oh yeah, yes, was so actually.
Let's just forget that.
Okay.
Let's leave it running, but don't interact with it. Forget about your hair.
Yeah. Okay, so we're taking inspiration from urban myths, and the urban myth we've kind of identified at the moment is based on an urban legend known as who put Bella in the witch tree.
Witch elm.
And it's interesting because it kind of takes some inspiration as well from J-horror and things like that. The idea of a spirit being trapped in a tree, you know, has some kind of reminiscence to someone being trapped in a well as well. So at the moment we have you playing the main character, the Investigator, a regular guy who has an interest in the paranormal, who runs a YouTube channel, who lives in a local blue-collar part of town and has been for a while trying to produce videos to get an audience for his interest in the paranormal. He does like little investigations and things like that. But he's a small fry character, is that right? There's something though I think really good about the more down-to-earth it is. There's a lot of people out there that can imagine making a YouTube channel that only has like 200-300 subscribers and it's all kind of parochial.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, I remember when I was at film uni, I tried to pitch the idea for something a little bit like that, and they hated the idea that it was so down to earth that it could just be like on the street. You know, like it had to be fancy, it had to be more artificial.
Yeah.
But for this kind of film, I think keeping it real just will give it a real power.
Yeah.
We have some other cast as well that we're figuring out ideas for roles for. They include Richard Pate, who has been in Black Gloves and The Devil's Machine. Alex Zorn as well, who is a new addition to the Hex team. And also John Van Delamas, who has also been in The Devil's Machine. In terms of your character, what do you think he should have around his immediate like social circle of characters? Is he a loner? Does he have a wife?
I think if we burden him with too many people, we'll have to, it'll be, I think it's probably just easier to make him kind of a loner.
Yeah.
Because it just means we don't have to think about, you know, what happens if he goes missing or, you know.
No, it's true. I mean, that's the thing as well. when you have wives and characters and you have to create for like a micro budget film, which this is what this is.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we can make him relatable.
Sure.
But I just think it would get so much more done if he's a loner.
No, I agree. I think that's a good idea.
I suppose we could just briefly talk about the setting and his nationality.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
But how do we explain why he's over here in a slightly... I mean, I know nobody gives a shit really, but something quick.
Well, that's the thing. A lot of people will think, oh, he's Irish. But they'll probably just think that Scotland and Ireland are probably the same country, that people just sound like that in both countries. The main form of your film takes place with you in front of the camera and with a cameraman. So I guess the cameraman might be your best friend. He might be like your nerdy friend, like as if you were, if you were a metal detector. It's just automatic nerd. The one thing more nerdy than filmmaking is being a metal detector. But if you were, then he would be your little buddy going out. So I guess in that sense, at least you have a friend. Quiet, mumbly spoken friend. Probably to be played by Michael Brewster. He'll have lots of lines like, yeah, alright, hey, okay. He'd be a bit like number 41 in Venture Brothers. Venture Brothers.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So I guess maybe making something of that relationship. I guess with you doing most of the talking really, since Michael is just by his nature really quiet. Although to act he can be more outspoken. And sometimes you could turn the camera on him as well, very rarely, but just to let folks know what he looks like. Right, so we've got you, we've got your buddy. You both share like an interest in the paranormal, and I guess maybe you've been childhood friends as well.
I'll come back to that.
Could the channel be something you made because you were like divorced a year before or separated and it became kind of a hobby?
Yeah. We're not going to go too details on that, are we?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
It might just be kind of psychological background for you.
Yeah. So...
There's a few guys that, for example, get hobbies like that when they had careers that occupied their time. Like, for example, local journalist or whatever, they lose that and then they decide to do their own little news investigative hobby thing based on a niche interest. But I mean, it could also be totally relatable in terms of like a regular job. Like, say if you were a sales manager or a credit manager or some kind of middle management or supervisor, in just a regular company, and that job was lost, and you decided that you just developed this interest. In some ways, the more relatable it feels, the more unique actually it will make the film, even though it has more in common with everyone else. Whereas I guess if you used to be, say, a hard-boiled journalist and you lost your job, these are kind of archetypes that, sure, they're common in film, but maybe it just takes something of the magic away. In other words, there could be more of peep show in your character than, say, a regular horror movie.
I think mundanity makes the horror a lot better, I suppose.
Yeah.
So
I think it's a lot more scary. When your friend tells you a nightmare or a ghost story that they think would happen for real, that could be more unsettling than any horror movie.
Yeah.
So when we think of like some of the inspirations, I threw one at you quite quickly that I found. I was just like, holy shit, why has no one done something on this? And they have, actually, there has been attempts. But we're not looking to do a literal adaptation of this event. But in general, we're kind of looking at things like unsolved murders and mysteries. there's a balance to be struck, because every murder is a tragedy, obviously, and you don't want to make anything that cheapens that. It's really just to take inspiration from some of the more novel aspects of unsolved murders and mysteries. One of them being, which became a cultural phenomenon in its own right, which was who put Bella in the witch elm. Is that right? Yeah. This was an unsolved murder that took place in the 1940s, where two young boys discovered the corpse of a woman who had been dead for some time inside a tree. And as news spread of this incident, people began to graffiti on tombstones and walls around the town, "Who put Bella in the witch elm?" 7 decades afterwards, a man that had been suspected supposedly confessed to the murder and had been for many times suffering from nightmares that he was being watched by a woman trapped inside a tree. And when I read that on the Wikipedia article, it was quite uncanny. It reminded me of Sadako with the ring and things like that. But when we get inspired by those kind of ideas, we don't think to ourselves, oh, let's make a literal adaptation, let's make like a horror ghost out of the person known as Bella from that murder. I mean, that would to us be bad taste. But the idea of someone trapped in like a tree or any other kind of object is quite interesting. What are your thoughts on that? To take like an amazing looking tree as an example, and to go with that inspiration, or something different?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. Yeah, because like when the writer came up with the idea of Sadako in the well, it wasn't on the spot that he probably came up with that. I think the tree idea though is a good one, because if we make up our own victim and story, you can still connect it to that famous event by saying it's inspired by. And we have where we work in Fife, we have forests and trees of some interest. And Michael as well, his special effects are pretty good, and he could probably help us accentuate the strange qualities of a pre-existing tree and make it really funky.
Yeah, the whole idea of finding someone in a place that you would not normally find them. Does it have to be a tree?
No, of course it's whatever you want. Yeah.
It's very difficult for it to not be a tree, really.
Yeah, I mean, I guess wherever it is, you want it to be outside. But of course, you've got trees, but then there is some abandoned industrial locations as well. Like where we are is kind of like a blue collar part of the country, and there's old train stations and things like that. There was actually a few train carriages that were abandoned as well, not that far from an abandoned hospital, which is also a possible shooting location as well. For example, if it was supposedly an unsolved murder that took place in the ruins of that hospital, that could be quite good. A bit risky to film in because of the dilapidated state, but with such a small team though, is probably doable.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of locations. To be honest, in a way, it's a little bit like a MacGuffin.
Yeah.
Whatever they emerge from, it's really just a case of what visually can be the most arresting.
Something, I mean, I suppose we'll just draw around it and keep that like as a question mark, just while I think about it for a little bit longer.
No, sure thing. So we're looking at the idea that this is a historical unsolved murder, and presumably, and that the location of the site of this murder has something of a cursed history about it.
The what has? Sorry.
So for example, like there is some kind of like curse associated with it.
Yeah.
So for example, if it was a tree or an abandoned building or something like that, bad shit has happened to people that have effectively gone there over the years.
Yeah, so if he's struggling to find the tree, then obviously, I mean, it could
that's a good point you make there, yeah, because if it's too obvious, then everyone would know where the tree is, the first tree. Maybe it's better that it has a slightly more historical setting then, like it happened 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Enough time so that time's passed and everything that happened like 40 years ago or soon after the event.
And it's been kind of lost to time almost.
Yeah, that'll make it more exciting when you uncover it as well.
Yeah.
If it was a tree, it could maybe be identified through a marking it supposedly had on the bark.
Or it could be one of those, like the moving churches, Portals of London thing. Maybe it could be a moving tree. Maybe it's a tree that changes location.
Yeah, that's pretty far out. It's got like legs.
No, it just suddenly appears in a different place. I don't know, that's rubbish.
Well, it's not necessarily rubbish. I mean, it can be... I mean, it definitely takes a slightly more, probably fantasy sci-fi direction with that.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's a possibility. Work it down. I think probably the idea of a moving tree might seem more fantastic than the ghost that supposedly emerges from it.
True. There's videos online of this guy who interviews old people from different counties in Ireland, and just asks them what they remember from their childhood as being like all the folk stories and urban legends and superstitions.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how it becomes. Maybe that's how it's mentioned to him.
Okay, so maybe he's researching something different, and then he gets diverted.
So he's doing his old superstition show or whatever, like his ghost story show, and somebody in passing mentions that.
Sure.
Maybe that?
I think that's a really effective device.
Yeah.
Likewise, as well, with the more historical case, it'll let you interview more older folks.
Yeah.
Who by their very nature and appearance just seem better on camera than most young actors.
Yeah.
Right, so additional cast then. We have some wonderful friends of ours. There's Richard Pate, who was in The Black Gloves. We discussed the idea of him playing a police investigator or a private investigator.
Yeah.
It could be, even though this is 40 years back, that the original family of the victim were so dissatisfied with the official police investigation that they sent somebody to help. In this case, the victim would be American, and we do have some American cast as well, so it's a good idea then to have that connection.
Okay.
I think it would make, I hate to use the word exotic, but it would make the victim seem more exotic as well. If she's beautiful and she's different, then that could spark a more intimate interest from your character as well.
Those are the ones that tend to make more of the news as well.
Yeah. So, for example, if, let's say, Richard was this kind of chap who, say, 10, 15 years after the murders, the police just gave up on the investigation, and then the family asked him at some point to resume a private line of inquiry. And he got so far before eventually he quit because of some disturbing stuff that happened that made him feel like there was a possibility that the curse could be true. Enough that in your initial exchanges with him, say on like Skype or Zoom, make him a kind of credible source of information, and then eventually you find some evidence which is something he didn't find, that is enough to encourage him to come to Scotland to help you for a portion of the film at least.
Yeah.
It could maybe be that he gets seriously injured or something happens that doesn't necessarily kill him but knocks him out of the game, you know, for that part of the movie. Or that something happens that's so freaky that he just kind of decides to, you know, exit.
Well, after he comes over.
Yeah. Personally speaking, I think the idea of him being incapacitated is more exciting.
What do you mean?
Like, he comes over and you guys maybe uncover something and then he gets affected or attacked or something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because the thing is, when you're leading the whole thing, like if you get knocked out or killed, then that's it. The whole thing ends. Whereas if other people come and help you, then they can be victims. To increase the stakes, you know, as you get to like the the last act. We also have Alex Zorn as well, who is American, and he is probably of an age where he could play the victim's brother, but he would have been very young.
Yeah.
But he might have some information, or just be an interesting part of your own research.
It could have been a nephew who was burdened with the legacy.
Sure. Yeah.
And he's kind of resentful of having his family being
associated with this whole curse phenomenon. Yeah.
Maybe he's a tricky customer to talk to.
Yeah, there could be something, there could be something he knows about the victim that he doesn't want to give up. There might be something even to do with his family. Like if there was like some kind of genetic trait or physiological trait or mental trait that he was uncomfortable with disclosing, but was something that could eventually help you to specifically identify whoever's haunting you, at which point eventually she haunts you, as the real person. I'll give, this is a bit, maybe it sounds a bit silly, but I'll give you an example, a cheesy example. Like, say everyone in their family was born with 3 fingers, and he didn't want to tell you that. And when you start to get haunted, you might not assume that it's actually the ghost of this person.
Why would I not, though?
Well, if you're investigating and you've got a channel, then you'll have an audience. And you might feel a little bit like an outsider as well, just with what you do. So you probably would start to experience paranoia before supernatural belief. You might think that someone's out to get you. You know, as you start asking questions, you start making waves about this curse.
Right.
Then if you start to see a girl, for example, then you might wonder whether it's somebody alive that's trying to prank you before eventually identifying something about them that gives you the revelation that it is actually the ghost. The cheesy 3-finger example is something that is like, if it's only known to him and eventually you learn it, and then you're able to use that to identify something about this person, then it could make for quite a shocking moment in the film. It doesn't need to necessarily be physiological, it could be psychological, in which way, so people thought she was all like really nice, this girl, but actually when their family has a madness or a violent tendency or something that might kind of raise the stakes for the danger of the curse or help to explain the rage behind the curse.
Yeah.
But like, the fall of the House of Usher, how the family was cursed with madness, and so in that story, the guy that wants to get married to Usher's daughter, who seems fine and lovely, is warned that the marriage can't go ahead because she has the curse of the family and will one day become a violent homicidal maniac. And he refuses to believe it, and of course, she does.
Yeah.
The Ring has a kind of an interesting thing with that as well, because we fear Sadako, which is terrifying. But when we learn her backstory, we also learn that she was murdered, effectively, for having something that she never asked to have. Yeah. And this is a secret that only her uncle or great uncle discloses in the Ring. It's like that kind of thing, just to add a secret, whatever that secret is, to add a kind of context to the.
Yeah, it would be like the secret that the girl in like Mungo had. That's kind of part of the one.
It's maybe a good role for Alex to.
Maybe the killer like fucked with their own family. Maybe they're not as nice or respectable.
Yeah, who knows? I think, though, personally speaking, I think it would be good if it related to the curse. It either lets you identify the antagonist as the supernatural force, third act type thing, or it adds a credibility to the dangers of the curse. So, for example, like if people died in a certain way from the curse, and it had something to do with the secret that Alex told you, like something she did when she was young, like she had problems and she would try to strangle people with cord or something. Who knows? Do you know what I mean? But
are we leaving it too late by doing all this? Like by just having the question mark of whether it's paranormal open for almost the entire film?
Oh, you can time this however you want.
Yeah.
You could have it happen in like the second act, the first act,
Yeah.
or the end of the second, that kind of thing.
Okay.
But if it matches up with the history of death or the curse, but it's something that the investigators never found out, that you've managed to find out, like a secret breakthrough, then that would be a good thing. But I reckon it should be something that makes us go, oh shit, the antagonist is real. Or might be real. I think that will give Alex some quite cool pathos as well with his performance. Having a secret is always a cool thing as a character. And another actor we have as well is John Vandal Amas, who I love. He's a crazy guy, and I mean that in the best possible way. You had some ideas about the type of character he could play.
I suppose I don't want him to be too cliched because he could just end up being that red herring that we all don't want. I suppose again he
because one idea was that he was like a hermit.
Yeah, like a kind of a loner.
Yeah, kind of living would be like if it was in a forest, or
who came into town at the wrong time when this was all happening, and was kind of ostracized by the community, and accused of probably accused suspect number one or something like that. Maybe.
I think it's a good idea. Yeah, because and that's the cool thing actually about your idea is that it does have a whodunit quality. Who did kill Laura Palmer, as it were.
Yeah.
And having somebody like a suspect like that, I think it's credible because, to be honest, it could be him or not. You could double twist it.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind double twisting it actually.
Sure, and that's what can make it really fun.
Yeah. Okay.
So the nature of this shoot being like a micro budget shoot is going to be quite flexible in the filming. You're going to kind of go off on a day or two with Michael, shoot some stuff, and then go off on another couple of days and shoot some stuff. It's quite there's like quite a lot of segments to it really. But that at least it can work like that though. Although there's no reason that you can't do more and just bash out a week as well, especially with our actors when they arrive as well. But at least with you being the lead and with Michael on cinematography, you can just shoot loads of stuff. So in terms of the curse itself then, effectively we're going to have a villain spookily dispatch people, and you'll end up hearing about their deaths, going there, trying to find more clues and getting more haunted, but eventually you yourself will begin to get haunted. Will this be a case, do you think, of you seeing the ghost like on video footage and pictures and things like that, and we start seeing her in the corner of our eye and stuff, or?
It's a tough one.
Yeah, it's a bit like, because then you can kind of end up being like shooting Ring, the found footage movie.
Yeah.
Which isn't necessarily a bad idea actually for when you come to the last act. Where effectively the film takes more of in fact, it's not even the last act, it might just be the last 10 minutes or the last 5 minutes, where it just feels like there's almost like a kind of a, once you've made the revelations and you've put the pieces together and then the curse happens, it's a bit like Sadako coming out the TV, then it's a case of your character fighting for his life to escape, survive.
Yeah.
although it can seem like a cliche or a trope, seeing ghosts in the pictures and things like that, it is quite a cool thing that your character could maybe start to feel like she's there, or that someone is there. With this paranoia suggesting whether it's somebody that's trying to prank you.
Yeah.
Actually, if we played with the idea that you'd broken up with somebody and you'd got into this, you could maybe even suspect it was like an ex, and then you eventually contact her and she's like, and you're just convinced, nah, it's not her. Oh my God, who is this doing this?
Is that really? I mean, I know you're spitballing. I'm Could be.
One of the cool things for you and your characters, you can get to think, like, what would I do if I started to suspect there's a woman following me that resembles the victim, or her dress or outfit, do you know what I mean, that she was found dead in or whatever? Like, would I immediately think it was supernatural, or would I think there's a possibility that someone is playing pranks, or maybe connected with the murder, trying to scare you off? Do you know what I mean? I think the paranoia would come first.
Yeah.
Probably, if it was me, I would probably suspect that it might be someone involved with the murder. Not necessarily even the murderer, just someone that doesn't want me to trek further into it.
Yeah.
If I was a bit precious about my YouTube channel, I might think it was like someone taking the piss out of me and my channel from the local area, who had seen me kind of going about and was thinking I was getting, big for my breeches.
Yeah.
But I think it'd be good for your character to go through those trains of thought, only to then put the pieces together as she seems to be getting closer and closer to realise that actually this is the curse, and that now I am cursed. Forcing you to do the last thing that you hope will spare you from the curse.
Yeah.
Which I guess would be finding a murderer. And then you can decide whether you do survive or not. To be honest, I actually think it would probably be a good idea if either you did, or it was left open as to whether you did or didn't. Because, there's no reason why.
If I did what? Sorry.
If you did survive, or if it was left open, because then there could be more.
I don't want it to, the last shot to be me going, ah!
Yeah.
I just want it to end on a kind of a more of a somber note, like a melancholic note.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't want it to be kind of stupid. Like
I thought that we could like slow-mo the scream and then have it echo.
There you go. And it echoes for the 5 minutes of the
5 minutes from the end credits, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'd rather it just end it on with me surviving, but not, I could, it would be kind of a melancholic, almost somber note.
And of course the thing is, these are the kind of things as well that we talk about, but you never really know until the edit.
Yeah. Like
you might end up deciding you want to perish, or you survive, or whatever. It'll be really interesting seeing how the tone comes through this, because although there's a script, there's going to be a lot of improvisation as well. And it'll be interesting seeing what kind of tone and energy the performers give you. So yeah, I mean, look, the idea of us hauling our asses off to abandoned rail yards, ruined hospitals, things like that, I think it sounds great. It sounds awesome. I love it. I think it's going to be a real adventure. We'll be filming this with a tiny crew most of the time. It might just be you, me, and Michael, and that's exactly the kind of location we can sneak into. So sounds good. In terms of in terms of the cinematography, it's obviously a documentary style of cinematography. It'll be, Michael will be moving about with the camera. So the style of cinematography is informed by basically where we want to film, the architecture and everything, the style. You're going to have lots of greys, blues. Yeah. And then that's going to be great. But what about like music? That's a tricky one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like the films like Lake Mungo and Noroi the Curse, do they have incidental music? I can't remember.
I think Noroi had Did Noroi have a kind of what did it have? Did it even have music?
I guess if it doesn't have music, which I could see the benefit of it not having music, like I don't think Borderlands has music.
No.
So maybe that's because in a way, although the style is different in terms of, it's set in a church, Borderlands, it is the kind of mood that we want, isn't it?
Maybe, I mean, the music could be very subtle. It could be almost like a blend of the background, like the industrial noises and hums and stuff like that.
I mean, it could also be related more to the supernatural stuff with her. Because I guess you've got sound design, which, if done cleverly, you wouldn't notice, but you could build to the atmosphere. Like, for example, the sinister winds and atmospherics and things like that for when you're in these scary locations.
Yeah. I think not having music cues and just having, and maybe working our asses off, or me working my ass off on sound design being the kind of cue.
Sure. I mean, we could always ask the guy that did the sound design for Ring if he would maybe look at some of the scary stuff, even if he did this like one track or something that could be used for her. That would be amazing. He can't be expensive, right?
Let's check and see if he's still around or doing it.
Oh God, he can't be dead. It's not that old, surely.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of our actors. Of course, there is the actress that will play our victim, and that can be something that will, I guess, be opening to audition maybe in about a couple of weeks. We'll have a brief for her.
Excuse me.
It's the cola dude.
Yeah.
It's the way it gets me as well. Yeah, she'll be quite. I guess one thing is we'll need to cast an actress that is American or looks American.
Yeah.
Which is ironic because that's normally the opposite problem in most films. I'm just finding someone that isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose they won't be speaking, will they?
No, physicality may be important. Someone with a dance background.
Dance background would be.
It's not that we're trying to kind of copy Ju-on or The Grudge or anything, but it's just that when you have a non-speaking character, there is something remarkable. And also, I mean, from all of my films, I've always appreciated the importance of dance. That's why I absolutely love Alexandra Nicole Hume, who we love working with. And, she has proven time and time again the importance of physical performance.
I suppose, yeah.
That's the problem with film performance, really, is, of course, actors are taught quite rightly that's all about the face and everything, but that doesn't help when you need the whole body to be acting in a big way, in a weird way.
I suppose it would be a nice juxtaposition to the realism of the whole piece.
Oh, it could be brilliant. Do you remember the film Cairo or The Pulse? The scene where the guy is, there's a terrifying scene where our hero is trapped behind a bunker or something, it's like in a basement. It's like a ledge, and he peeks up and he sees this figure just walking towards him, but the way she moves, and of course it's a ghost, is that gave me Lake Mungo chills when I first saw that. I think I was literally dissolving into the sofa. That is exactly the kind of minimalist physicality with some sound design that if you do that, geez, and you only have to get one scene perfect with her, and that's it. It lingers with people forever.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay.
So we'll need someone good for that. So we've gone through characters, talked about cinematography, sound design, talked about music.
Yeah.
And at some point we'll be doing a modest Kickstarter for the movie, but that'll be in a little while. We're going to get some cool stuff in the can first, things like that. I guess the next step really is you will be producing a treatment, but open-ended enough that it can utilize improv and things like that. I love that kind of stuff. Yeah. My first film, Whiteout, was based on kind of like mumblecore. Yeah. And Dogma and stuff like that. We you write a script, you have the scene headings and the actions, and you know what the outcomes are supposed to be, but you just work organically with the actors to arrive at the point where you feel that you've got enough rushes to edit with. It's so much fun. I look forward to working with that format again, and so it'll be a real privilege and fun to work with you on that film, because it is just a style of filmmaking that I think is really fun and rewarding for all the artists.
Sure.
For the actors as well, and for yourself when you're acting. It really lets you feel that you inhabit the characters.
Yeah.
You know? So that would be good.
Cool.
So that's what's next. I think we've covered everything, eh? Okay, so folks, thank you for hanging out with us as we talked about this film, which has a working title. I guess the working title is Who Put Bella in the Witch Elm?
That's not copyrighted, but yeah.
Yeah, it's just a working title. Don't worry, guys, if anyone has optioned the story to this terrible incident, just a working title.
Put Susie in the sewer.
Yeah, exactly. We will be producing more videos like this when we are basically moving on to do more work with Tom's feature film, and the same with our feature films as well, like our fantasy movie and other stuff. This is all about you guys sharing in our pain and misery as we try and create art. Sure, we'll talk about films like House, so you'll get more obscuramas and stuff like this, but we are filmmakers and artists first, and that is what will set your experience with us apart from normal channels that go blah 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 about movies. Okay, so thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you will look forward to more video diaries soon. And that's it. Bye. Cheers. Make sure you don't miss any of our future Hex Presents videos or any of our other crazy shows at Channel Hex by hitting subscribe and the bell notification icon. Also, if you would like to support our channel and help us make more exciting and fun shows, then do support us on Patreon by hitting the link in the description. Thank you guys, and goodbye.